We're live. Hi, this is Sariskin from Montier, and I'm here with, I was going to say you're all Niall Dux from Lochac. This is part of my 50 Duke interview series, my Leaf quest as it is. I was supposed to fight 50 Dukes this year, but that's not going to happen, so I'm interviewing them instead, and I'm learning all sorts of cool stuff. And I'm meeting a whole bunch of people that I would have never probably met this year, like my Australian friends. So we usually start with your origin story. So if you could tell me when you found the SCA and how, that would be great.
Yeah, okay. So I found it in my first year of university, which was 2001. And I think I saw it actually as some kind of demo that was going on television, and it was some kind of like weekend local travel show situation. I just caught a glimpse of it in between doing things, and I went, "Oh, that looks pretty cool." And then that started some internet searching at the time, and then I happened upon what it was. It was obviously a fighting demo at the time, and that's what drew me in. And so found my local group, which was a shire on the outskirts of Western Sydney, and went along there, and got a sword put in my hand and pointed at a pel, and started learning a couple of things, and started going to their weekly fighter practice. Was pretty keen to get authorized and jump straight in as soon as I can, and those guys from the shire pointed me to the Greater Barony, which was the Barony of Roney in Sydney, and started going to those trainings and got authorized pretty quickly, and started going to training. And I did that for probably about 12 months, maybe 18 months. And then I dropped out just for various reasons, for university and other reasons at the time, and stopped. And then in 2007, I was in the town I'm in now, Canberra, and was leaving the army and going back into civilian life, and decided to reinvest in the SCA, and went along to a local fighter practice about a week before a tournament, and just basically turned up and said, "Hey, I used to fight, I used to be authorized, can I get reauthorized?" And hit up the baronial tournament next weekend, and everyone was pretty cool about it, and I reauthorized and went back in. So I'd say that I've been properly doing the SCA since January 2008.
And did you keep your armor from before?
Yeah, so I had a real hodgepodge newbie set that I'd acquired back in the day, and it was back in my parents' house in Sydney, and I picked it up on a weekend visit, and the straps were all rotten and falling apart, and so there was a few zip ties and duct tapes that first event, and that the training session the week before, when I went to get reauthorized, I pulled my sword out, and my first leg shot I threw, I snapped the rattan, just had been drying on the side of the house at my parents' place for a long time. So yeah, I had a real hodgepodge kit, but the person here in Canberra who I ultimately became squire to over the time, he was an armouring laurel as well. So my armour improved rapidly after that, and there's a lot of very talented armourers here in this town that I've learnt a lot of things off, and I'm a hack of an armourer. I don't do it very well, but I do it enough to keep myself in reasonable kit now.
So who did you squire to?
So Duke Cornelius was my knight that I squired to. Up until I was knighted, which was after my first reign.
And how did you hook up with him?
So when I came to the training sessions here in Canberra, which is the Barony of Politicopolis, he was Duke that was here, and it was a relatively small but deep fighter practice for someone like me, because the regulars were a Duke account, another night, and then a couple of unbelts who were on the up and up and not far from the cusp, and then me, who could basically just throw an onside snap and a not very effective offside. So it was a pretty deep training session to fall into to start, and the leg bruises I got out of that were phenomenal in the early years.
So how long did it take you to get Squire? Did you ask him or did he ask you?
We had a conversation about it in the car on the way back from a training session. We'd gone down to one of the more rural shires, about 3 and 4 hours drive away from here. And we did that a couple of times. And the reason that was happening was all the knights that were here kind of got together and took a couple of us unbelts out to this rural area. And the idea was to show us that we weren't as bad as we thought we were, because we were going to this training session with all these high-end fighters here in town. But, if we went for a drive somewhere, we could find some people who were of similar level to us. And it was a bit of a confidence boosting trip, and it worked. I really appreciated it, as opposed to, getting one-shotted, 50 times a training session. So yeah, we had a conversation in the car, and it happened to be after that.
Did you know from when you came back that you wanted to be a knight?
Definitely. I mean, I even thought that when I started, in the first time in 2001, but that's more to do with my personality anyway. If there's a mountain I want to climb it, what's the end goal? What's the thing I can get out of this? Whether it be SCA or university or my job or whatever. It's just my nature that if there's something there, I need to go do it. So yeah, that's what I wanted to do, and I guess I didn't recognise that you could do that without being a squire as well. That wasn't really something that I'd worked out, because everybody that I kind of met who was a knight, they always say, "Oh, I was squire to this person," or this person's going to get knighted soon and they're squire to Duke Alpha or whoever. So yeah.
And what was your training like when you were a squire to Cornelius? Didn't he have a school or something?
That started later.
Okay.
So in the early days, it was like a normal basic training session is what I'll say. We'll turn up, we'll put on our kit, we'll do a few passes, and then we'll work on whatever the thing is that is the most obvious thing that needs work on in the day, or one of the other squires who was on the up and up would take me aside and show me something. And that was the very early day. He did start doing more of the school type stuff later on, and that was him following Gemini's training session training system from over there, and he tried to incorporate that over here, which was very good for a bunch of the newer fighters and the newbie courses. I was, I guess, a bit of a older, more experienced, more belligerent squire by that stage, and I wasn't willing to break it all down and start new. I just wanted to pick up little bits as I went. So that sort of happened, towards the end of our relationship there. But yeah, in the early days, it was kind of that more traditional, old school SCA training session. But like myself as a learner, I do better watching anyway rather than doing. So being able to watch the local knights here, or when we traveled everywhere and watch them fight, that's more how I learned than any kind of structured training method. I'm a very tactical fighter, and I like to watch, exactly what is happening and how something came to be in a fight, and then, analyze that and break it down and work out how to exploit it, I guess.
So did you utilize YouTube then in your journey?
Yes and no. I guess that, back in, like, we look at YouTube now and we can find all these great videos of high-end fighters, and it's kind of, I think we forget how recent that really is, that you could do that. Like, if you start thinking back to 2010, 2009, you'd find these really grainy, low quality tournament videos out of places, and you'd be like, well, something happened there. I can't really see what it was because it's not really zoomed in and it's going too fast and I can't slow it down. And so not a lot. We would do some video of ourselves and then some self analysis afterwards. Plug the old digital video camera into the big screen at home and then watch it. But with everybody around while having beers, because that's the best way to do it, I think.
So how long did it take you to get knighted?
So if you take out that first year, which I usually do, and say that I started from 2008. So I got knighted in 2014, but I had reigned the year before, so I did my first reign as an unbelt.
Right, I was going to ask you about that because, well, where I live, that's not a thing. Like, unbelts don't reign. How was it to reign as an unbelt?
So
now that you've reigned a couple more times.
Yeah, I've reigned 2 more times since then. So in Lochac, I was the 5th unbelt king, and at the time, I represented 5 reigns out of 25 reigns, so we had a fairly high percentage of unbelted reigns at the time that I came through. And I'm also the most recent person to reign unbelted. Nobody's done it since I did it in 2013. How was it? I don't think there was any difference to my 2 other reigns, except that I probably was less confident in my first reign, but that was more around, it's got nothing to do with being an unbelt. It was more to do with, managing the kingdom and making the right decision and doing all that. And that really had very little to do with being a knight or anything like that. It was just my initial experience coming into that role to do that job. It was very interesting because I've reigned once at Pennsic, and that was as an unbelt. I've been to Pennsic twice, the second time as a duke, but the first time in 2013, I went to Pennsic, and I was the only unbelted king at Pennsic that year. It was great because the other kings didn't give a crap, so there was no issues there. I think it helps being an Australian coming into that because people are interested in talking to you and hanging out with you anyway. And so I had a lot of fun with all the other kings at Pennsic there, and being unbelted didn't really matter. It did lead to some interesting conversations in some other places. So I turned up at the Known World Squires tournament. And I was talking to some people there, and they were having a great conversation with me because they knew that I was the king. And I kind of rounded off the conversation with the other people who were going to enter. And I said, well, do you know when the tournament starts? Because I'm very keen to have a fight. And they went, oh, Your Majesty, it's only for unbelts. It's not for knights. And I looked down, and I had a blue belt on, in a Lochac blue color. And I went, well, that's fine. I'm not a knight. And they went, but you're the king. And I went, yep. Yeah. And they're like, but how are you not a knight? And I'm like, well, it's simple. You enter the tournament, you win the tournament, and you become the king. And that's a whole separate thing from becoming a knight. So I really enjoyed that tournament because I just kind of mingled amongst the mob of other unbelts and waited to see what was happening. And I thought it might have been a bit of an issue. And I had 4 of the Lochac Knights who were in camp come up with me just to hang out and watch, sort of thing. And the people who were running the tournament came out and they made an announcement, and they said, we've had a lot of questions about eligibility for entry to this tournament. We've determined that the eligibility is you must have some form of fealty relationship with a member of the Order of Chivalry. And I turned to my guys and I said, well, that's fine. You're all in fealty to me. So that's some form of fealty relationship. So,
Right.
so that was pretty good. And then as we were all lining up and getting ready, I could see I feel like it was the King of Tramaris, but I might be wrong. And a few other people were kind of milling to organize the tournament. And I saw them looking at me and then doing a little, and I said to the guys next to me, I said, excuse me, I'm just going to be back in a second. I said, hey guys, kind of saw you talking about me. And they looked at me and they went, are you a squire, Your Majesty? I went, yes, actually I am. And they went, huh, good for you. And so then, got to go and enjoy the Known World Squires tournament the one time I was there as an unbelt. So that was great. It was a really great event. So the only complexities that came up doing an unbelted reign was I knighted a couple of people during that, and so I had their knight stand with me with their hand on my shoulder while I conveyed the ceremony and the buffet and whatnot.
But you get to do everything, right? You just have to have the hand on the sword or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. So I did the whole ceremony, and literally their knight had his hand on my shoulder as I was doing it. So
cool.
Yeah,
it's a kind of an interesting thing when you try to do your lineage through who knighted you when unbelt does, because then you have to sort of go both ways with the unbelt and with the guy who had the hand on the shoulder. But I digress. So do you think being in the military has influenced the way that you approach fighting and your training?
Interesting question. Well, I work in law enforcement now, and that was what my undergrad at uni was as well. And I actually think law enforcement training has influenced it more than military training did. And I think it actually helps me train other people more than anything else, because I can, I guess, explain why things are happening in the stressful moment, when anxiety is high and adrenaline is firing, and what your bodily responses are during that, in relation to target fixation or auditory exclusion or whatever, or why you're getting upset because you're having an adrenaline spike because it was uncontrolled. And so I think a lot of that training that I had separately has helped me fight, but moreover helped me teach people how to fight, because there's a remarkable amount of high-end fighters who just do the thing that they do, and they don't necessarily understand why or how it's happening. So I think a lot of the training that I've received separately has helped me be able to explain that to other people.
That's interesting. I was going for more of like a discipline angle, or a regimented, but I think that understanding how the body reacts and how the body works is a very interesting side education that you can understand all that, because that's very useful for teaching, because everybody reacts a little different. Yeah.
I think the regimented side and that kind of disciplined personality actually plays more into when we go to court rather than go to fighter practice, to be honest. Like, I want everyone to be quiet and listen during court because somebody's talking, and that's what's supposed to be that's supposed to be what's going on. Fighter practice is fun, and we have silly jokes and misbehave and go for beers afterwards and all of that. I think the only discipline or regimented stuff would be is if I'm training for a specific event or a specific tournament, then I kind of switch on into a training mode to focus on that. But that's purely about what I'm doing with myself, not what's happening around me.
So did you train for that first crown to win it?
Yeah. So what happened was, at the time, my squire brother and squire sister were reigning Felix and Eva. And I think you are interviewing Felix, or you have interviewed Felix.
In a couple weeks I get to interview Felix. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were squire brothers, and he got knighted, and then they were reigning, and I knew I was kind of on the up and up of skill sets, but didn't really know what was going on in the background, as you don't know when these things are sort of happening. And I'd had the crown that Felix won. Everyone went off to the Knights meeting, and I was hanging outside having a drink, and that's when I first knew that I was being talked about at Knights Council, because after that meeting I had about 7 knights come out to me separately and go, the one thing you need to do is, and then that one thing was 7 different things, right? And so I cracked the shits a little bit, and I went to my knight and I went, did you all go to the same meeting? Because I've got 7 different things, then you're all saying it's the one thing. And there was this kind of deep philosophical conversation, and I thought to myself, I can't handle this ambiguity of what's going on. And then Felix and Eva stepped up, and I was on their guard, and that gave me a lot of exposure to some travel and some fighting. And I thought to myself, well, you know what, I can't do this ambiguous thing. I don't know what this thing is. But if you win that tournament, you get that hat. So it's a defined goal that you can go and do. So I went, well, I'm just going to go train to win crown. I'm going to forget about the grey ambiguity of the one thing times by 7, and I'm going to go do the one thing that I know how it's done, because I've seen it done. So that first time when I kind of made that decision I was going to do that, I had about a month and a half to really do focused preparation. And yeah, I did train my butt off for that. And it was, at the time, it was a pel work focus, fitness focus, and whatnot. And I knew where the tournament was, and the tournament was in a place called Bundaberg, which is in North Queensland, in our northern eastern kind of part of the world, which for us is subtropical. And so I knew there was going to be a lot of humidity. I live in Canberra, which is one of the driest places ever. So at night time, I would go out and I'd do about 30 minutes on the pel doing the thing that I would do. And then I would come inside into the bathroom and turn on the shower hot water tap and the sink hot water tap and the bath hot water tap, and let the bathroom get really, really steamy. And then I'd proceed to do a bunch of squats, lunges, push-ups and sit-ups, breathing hot water in the air.
In the bathroom.
In the bathroom, just to make sure that I was specifically conditioned for the environment that I was going to at the time. Now, that was probably overkill. It wasn't very humid on the day during my first crown tournament, but I felt well prepared, and I think that's what helped me get there. I was having a conversation last night actually with your friend Hulla, and I was talking about having just being confident in your own ability, being confident in the tool that you've got here allows you to focus on what's happening in front of you and do other things. So yeah, that's what I sort of did for the first tournament. My training since then is a little less focused and intense and disciplined, but I had a goal at the time and I wanted to get it. So.
Oh, yeah, I get that. That's funny though. when you feel prepared, like then you're not worried, right? Like it's just, you've done everything you can, so you can just be in the moment.
That's right. And somebody said to me, you know, the only one thing that you can control is how much better prepared you are than anybody else. And I thought, well, it was a relatively small tournament because of where it was being held. I think there was only about 10 people in it, and half the field were Shiv and half were unbelts. And so I thought to and it was coming on the back of our festival, which is our big annual event over Easter weekend. And most people after festival have a couple of weeks off of not doing anything because they've smashed themselves for a week on war and pickups.
You need a vacation from your vacation.
That's right. So most people do nothing after that for a while, but I went, no, I will be the most prepared person there. And then when I turned up on the day and I was getting getting into my prep and getting focused on what I was doing, one of the knights was sitting in a camp chair near the list field, and he was talking to somebody, and what he said was, well, I've looked at the list and I think I can win today. And that was sufficient motivation for me to go, okay, champ. So, yeah.
Yeah, that would be pretty motivating. So what's your tourney day ritual then?
So in simple terms, I like to be left alone. That's the thing that I need. So I do have a lot of caffeine to make sure I'm not fatigued or anything. I have some music that I kind of listen to, but it's all just about amping up my focus more than anything. When I turn up to wherever the tournament is, I go and find the tree or the spot that I want. And the key thing I want is that it's away from other people, because I don't want to have conversations while I'm, just in the zone, because I just want to watch what everybody else is doing and just keep this it's the same kind of focus as if you're going into an academic exam or something like that. You just want to, I'm just going to go in, I'm going to do this thing, and then I'll worry about everything else later. And I don't like to distract myself. That being said, I've found that when you're raining, you find ways to be completely distracted and then put your helmet on and be completely focused, because you've got 500 things happening all at once. But yeah, if I'm serious about it, it's leave me alone. I'm going to go sit under the tree by myself.
Do you have something that you do on the field to pull your focus in at the beginning?
Yeah, I have a little piece of music that I run through in my head, like my ultimate amp up song, and that it naturally gets my heart rate and my respiration already up before I start. And that's what I do. I just hum it to myself in my helmet, usually while the heraldic announcements are going on.
And what role does your consort play?
Yeah, okay. So I'm not a huge fan of consort interaction during tournaments at all. I think consorts help, well, for me anyway, by providing the environment for you to be able to train in the time period leading up. It's when I say I want to be left alone, I really want to be left alone when it goes into a tournament. So just the thing of, I guess, making sure that where I put my stuff down, I do have a drink ready. And other than that, it will just be, if there's some kind of armor failure and I need to rapidly do a repair, somebody assisting with that. But that doesn't have to be, my consort. When I did my second crown tournament that I won, a guy who ultimately became my squire, he just turned up. He's just a very helpful dude, and he just started helping me move things and all that. And I said, just leave me be, sort of thing. And he left me be. And then something happened and he jumped straight in with a zip tie or whatever to help me out. So yeah, I literally like to be left alone.
I get it. That works. So how long after you stepped down from your first reign did it take to get knighted?
Okay, so here's a funny story. So when I stepped down the first time, Duke Alpha was stepping up. It was to be his third reign, and he was the first king of Lochac. So there's he's got quite some renown in this kingdom. So I crowned him, turned around, took the knee, waiting to get my county situation. And it was during that he then said, I'm offering you elevation to the Order of the Chivalry. Now I immediately went, thank you, Majesty, I'll accept. And then in my brain, as I was walking away, leaving court, I was thinking to myself, how did he do that?
Right. They have a secret meeting without the king. They must have.
Right. So he sort of did. He had a quorum of individuals that he went and spoke to personally in a non-meeting format, and he formed the view that from those conversations that he'd be offering me elevation. So the night's meeting that immediately happened after that court was apparently colourful and interesting, but he stuck to his right as crown, and he had conversations with a quorum of the order, and that's the way it happened. It did become an interesting couple of weeks, I guess, on the sidelines, as a little bit of drama like that does. So that was in 12th night in January. The offer was made, and I elected to have my elevation at Festival in April, being the biggest event, and where all my friends and contacts would be from that. So yeah, I was offered straight away.
Did that affect sort of how the tone of your vigil was?
So my vigil occurred at Festival, and during my first reign, I'd offered somebody elevation as well. He's well known in the US, Lucas Von Eyck. Yep, Dash.
He's from Atlantia, like originally.
Yes. Yeah. So I'd offered him elevation while I was crowned. So he'd also elected to have his knighting at Festival. We'd become very close over the year or so before that. And so we elected to have a joint vigil. And that was facilitated by Duke Gabriel in Lochac, and it kind of took a weird tangent during it, because we decided to have this joint vigil, and we'll be in the tent, and we'll both sort of sit near each other, and we'll take advice, and that will be great. But I'm not even sure how it happened. The crown turned up, and then there was like a lot of people in the tent, and Lucas and I were sitting next to the crown, and then there was this big round table conversation going on where we were apparently taking topics from the audience, and then everyone was sort of responding, and I remember being my back was to the back of the tent, and I remember being absolutely freezing cold because I was sitting in the same spot for 4 hours, and Duchess Constantia, Gabriel's wife, could see me, and she's like, "Oh, do you want a drink?" And I said, "Can I have a cup of tea?" And she went and made me a hot lemon tea. And meanwhile, I was very aware that in the people who weren't being involved in the very serious conversation in the tent, just outside the tent, were having an inordinate amount of time getting drunk and rowdy outside the tent. So it was a different vigil. it took a weird turn. But the next morning, I got up with some of my Squire brothers and sisters and my knight, and went and jumped in the dam that was on the site where we were having the event. It was probably about -3 degrees Celsius, so 3 below freezing for us, and that was cold, but it certainly woke me up. So yeah, it was an interesting vigil.
Interesting. So you did the whole bath thing and all of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That's cool. So I sort of skipped over your reign, but what was your favorite part of reigning? Like, it doesn't have to be your first one, any of the three.
My favorite thing about reigning is giving awards of all types of awards, be it an AOA level award up to a peerage, and just making the moment special for that person, and creating the memory in the moment for that person, because that's what the SCA is about. We create memories and moments for people, and recognize them as part of a tribe or a social group that's that we think you're worthy of recognition, and we're going to do it, and it's our privilege to do it. So that is definitely my favorite part of reigning.
Do you have a least favorite part?
Yeah, peerage meetings.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I don't even have to reign for that to be my least favorite part.
So like in my mundane career, I've been a manager for quite a long time, and I'm used to meetings and bureaucracy and things like that. And I like my meetings to be relatively efficient and on track and whatnot. And I find that sometimes the diversity of experience and views that can be raised in a peerage meeting kind of derails that, and it can become quite circular, and it's not the happiest place on earth at times.
Right. That's a very kind way of putting it. What's your favorite tradition in your kingdom?
Ooh, good one. Look, I don't know if I have a favorite tradition, because I feel like everything is a tradition the way we do it. We've recently gone about a few small changes in calendars and the way events are run and all that, and that really bothered me, because I don't like change. I'm a very stubborn individual. I guess probably one of my favorite traditions is we have one award that is bestowed once per reign, which is the Lochac Order of Grace, and it's always great to see who that goes to and why, and sometimes it's very publicly obvious as to why that person got the Lochac Order of Grace for that reign, and then sometimes you don't know why a person's got it, but clearly it was something great to the crown, and they've really supported the crown during that reign, and it's an award that you can only get once, sort of thing. It's given out once per reign, so that's probably one of the great traditions, I think.
Is that like in our kingdom we have a lion, and it's sort of like what epitomizes the kingdom, or a pillar of the kingdom? Is that the same sort of thing, or?
Yeah, it's based on grace and courtesy in theory, but yes, from my conversations I've had with my other Antirian friends, I think that's the closest kind of award. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. So, what do you think the Order of Chivalry does well as an order?
Training people to fight, really, bringing people into the fighting community, and as it goes on, because we all start when we first start fighting, that's what we do, but then we have the inculcation of culture of the SCA after that. I think one thing that we do well is provide a smorgasbord of paths and options for people as they go on, whether that be in fighting styles or paths within the game, whether that be, you know, as an individual who wants to do their own thing, whether it's bringing somebody into a household, whether it's, you know, sending them off into other activities within the organisation. I think we perform a really good mentoring function for people.
What do you think we could do better besides have more efficient meetings?
Look, I don't know how to say that we would do it as an order, but as individuals, I think we really need to be a lot more self-reflective and a lot more self-reflective of the things that we say and do and the effect that that can have on individuals. And, you know, it's fine to have fun and be flippant and be drunk, but the thing that you might be flippant about might be something that is really near and dear to that person. So it's not to say that you shouldn't have fun and you can't say funny things at various times, but I think it's just an awareness that that you might be upsetting someone, and for the person who's getting upset, that might be developmental for them as well. They might need to check their perception on why they think thing X is very important, and is it really as important, you know, as you're making it. You know, if the SCA fell over tomorrow, is thing X still important to you? You know, who knows? But I think that's one thing that the order and probably all peerage orders could do, is just be, you know, hyper conscious of how we speak to other people, because we are in a leadership role and we are the leaders, and the things that we say carry more weight than a lot of other people. And if somebody is aspiring to a certain thing, and then you make one off the cuff comment that you think is funny, but it upsets them for 6 months, then that's not what we want. So I think that's what we could all do better.
Yeah. Do you have a training methodology for your squires?
Only in as much as I treat every squire differently, because every squire or every student or everybody I ever teach, I think requires individual attention. So I don't have you know, I don't have a fixed program. I don't have a school methodology in how to train people. You know, it's easy to train people into functional things, but I'm more interested in, I guess, explaining to them why things happen and why things are going on in a fight, and getting that psychological element of how to manage adrenaline, how to manage control escalation of force, how to recognize what's going wrong in a fight, and how to adapt to what's happening. I'd rather teach that. And if I can do that through, I guess, you know, you need to be on your toes for footwork because X, Y, and Z, and then talk through the reasons for that. That's kind of the way I do it. And so, you know, I want my squires to go and do their own training, because, you know, I tell them things like, you can throw a snap, sure, and your margin of error on the Pell is that much. I can't make you get your targeting down to that much. You need to go and throw it until your targeting is down that much. That's not something I can teach you, but that's something you need to do. Right. You know, because you need to be able to hit the very small gap very fast. And if you miss and you hit a shield, then, you know, what a waste of time, sort of thing. So that's the sort of training that you need to go do by yourself. And then I will talk to you about sort of what's happening in the fight. And if you're having, you know, a specific motion issue or whatnot, then sure, we can pick that apart and we can work through that. But we need to identify that either by yourself or between us while we're watching something, and then I'll give you the practical tool to solve that. But once you've got that tool, let's go back to talking about the fight in general. So, I've often said to my squires, I can't be motivated for you. I'm not a motivational speaker. That's not my jive. I don't do it. You need to be motivated and you need to do the thing. And then when there's a problem or an issue, then I'm there to solve it and guide it and fix it. But I'm not a sports coach. I'm not a motivator.
What do you look for in a squire?
Enthusiasm. It's solely enthusiasm. I want to do this thing. I want to do this thing and I want you to help me. Okay, cool. That's great. So I really look for that enthusiasm. I do also look for, in broad terms, social fit with my household and my friends, because it's a friendship more than a hierarchical relationship. And I've seen some very hierarchical squire knight relationships, more so in the US when I've been to the US and traveling. I don't think that fits very well with Australian culture, where we're a bit more of a flat hierarchy here as a culture and a society. And we don't give a lot of deference to anyone. In fact, Australian culture is about bringing people down to size and making everybody equal again. So I do want to make sure that anybody that I have that sort of squire relationship with, that I would be happy to have them over for dinner, watch a movie, sit down in a pub and have a conversation, travel in a car with them for 5 hours to go to the nearest event. I find that social fit is very, very important, because if we're going to have a relationship, well, it's a friendship sort of thing. And, I need to want to have you over in my garage to hit some metal and, talk shit while we have a beer. So.
Right. You're going to spend a lot of time together.
Yeah.
Are you in the camp of somebody has to ask you, or do you ask people to be your students?
So I think I've asked all 4 of my squires if they wanted to be a squire. Interestingly, the first person I asked to be my squire, I asked the night before I was knighted, and that's England, who's the current queen of Lochac. But I had known her for a long time prior to that. So yeah, I think I've asked all 4 of my squires to be my squire.
Okay. I'm supposed to ask you, what's the best way to eat hash browns?
Oh, harsh. So do you know the backstory?
I don't. But...
Okay. So about, I'm going to say 5 weeks ago, as I said, I work in law enforcement, and I was in my building at work, in the cafe, waiting for my coffee order. And there's a group of individuals who attend that cafe every morning, who think that 5 hash browns and a caramel latte is a sensible breakfast choice every morning, every day. To say that they don't show the most respect to their uniform, I guess is an understatement. And I see them progressing down this path, and I find that disappointing in a way. And so I chose to vent that on Facebook and say it's really hard not to be judgy about this, because this is not great. And then that unleashed a torrent of by that evening 97 comments.
Oh my God.
Of individuals either telling me that I shouldn't be judgy and I'm a fat shamer, to a range of people who were making hash brown jokes and posting up how many hash browns they were taking. But I really appreciated that that I admitted that I was about to judge something for what was happening, because I found it disappointing and I needed to vent about it, and then everyone proceeded to judge me for being judgy. I thought that was a great little undertaking, but I think a lot of people lost the context as well of the situation, that this was an everyday occurrence, and there was some people who were doing some harm to their health. It was evidently not part of a balanced diet and exercise regime that they were undertaking.
Well, the person that told me to ask you was definitely not trying to shame you. I think they thought it was funny. So yeah.
Yeah, there was a few people there, but at the 97 comment mark, I just deleted it and I stayed off Facebook for about 4 days because.
Okay, I didn't see the post, so that was not you either. So, did you bring your sword?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. Well, can we just talk about it?
Sure.
Okay. How long is your sword usually?
So I do the thing where you stand up and you put your hand down by your side, and it's that length. So I've heard people talk about X amount of inches and all of that. My sword is Niall size. I stand up and I put my hand down by my side. If it fits under there, that's the way it works.
And do you use a thrusting tip?
I have a thrusting tip. I always have. I'm quite fond of a thrust to the face in the middle of a tournament.
Do you plane your swords?
I do a little bit. I've got a multi-tool sanding belt, and I run the sides down on that. And
how do you carve your handle?
So I literally carve my handle like a real sword. It's a lot thinner than most people are used to. I have quite short fingers, but a very wide palm. And I like my sword to be very, very narrow in my hand, very, very small, so that I can adjust my grip and do things. And I don't understand how people just shave a little bit off the round, and I don't know how they hold it, and even just to pick it up hurts my forearm when I go to do it. So
yeah, I do mine really narrow too, in sort of an almond shape, and I made my squire do that, and every time he does it narrow like I think he should, he breaks it at the basket hilt, which I don't understand. But
yeah, so I mean mine still stays quite thick up near the basket hilt, and then cuts right in and goes down. It has that I don't even know what shape that's called, but
hourglass.
Yeah, pretty much just an hourglass, but it's still quite thick where the basket hilt connects at the top and bottom.
Do you use a trigger?
I do use a trigger. The trigger I have connected to the front tang of the basket hilt. It's just a simple leather loop, and the way I use it, I put my middle finger through the trigger, and then I lock my index finger down on top of it like that.
Okay.
So that just seems to be the comfortable way for me to do it.
And do you use any grip tape or hockey tape inside your handle?
No grip tape, no hockey tape. I try and sand the handle pretty smooth when I'm making a new sword, and then I just suck up the rough spots and the blisters for the first couple of weeks until my hand gets used to the new sword and the sword wears down a little bit, and it kind of gets impregnated with a little bit of sweat and does the job after that.
Is your chain that you're wearing right now, is that that's very, very pretty. Is there a story behind that?
Yep. So I bought this at Penzic. I was walking past a chainmail shop and I saw it and just went, I need that. And a lot of the guys in my household have the Crafty Celts ones, the really big wolf's head chain. Yeah, really big, really chunky. And I looked at those at Penzic as well and thought, well, that's $400. And that's a lot of money when you've already spent, $3,000 on an airfare and $1,000 on a rental car and you've bought out half of the Walmart in the Appendix there to be able to camp. It's quite the financial undertaking to travel from Australia to Pittsburgh. So I went, well, I really want one of those, but it is $400. And then I'd just be the same as everybody else. So I just sort of sat on it for a while. And then I was walking past one of the shops that just had all the chainmail chains that were available. And this one was sitting like up the back and was the biggest one there. And I I walked over to look at it and I'm like, $120? Well, that's totally reasonable. So I got that and I bought it and I put it on and I walked over and the first comment I got from people was, that's ridiculous. So I've stuck to it ever since because, I like it, but it's quite heavy. It's 1.8 kilos. So I don't know what that is in pounds, but it can weigh on your neck after a while. So when I'm drinking at nighttime, it kind of comes off and just
it almost looks like a chain of state, right? Like it's very substantial.
I mean, it's just brass, chainmail, but yeah, it's
very cool. All right, are you ready for the final 10?
Sure.
Okay, so if you could fight anyone in the world, who would it be?
I want to come and fight Miles.
Good choice. Miles is a blast.
Just because I've seen. I think it's just the spinning back fist videos that really make me want to come and do that. So
he's super fun. He's super fun. Who would you like to see reign in your kingdom?
Who would I like to see reign in my kingdom? Everyone. I would like to see everybody who wants to reign undertake the commitment to put in the work to be able to do it and then reign.
Cool. If you could talk stick with anyone in the world for an hour, who would it be?
Good question. Somebody used this term once, and I'm going to use it here. Unbelt McNoface, which would be just some random person that I meet by a fire at a big event who wants to talk to me about stick, who wants to talk to me about fighting, and is enthusiastic about it, and we can have that exchange of ideas. I don't have any one person fixed in my brain of going, oh, I wish I could talk to that, because if I wanted to talk to them, I'd just try and talk to them. So I love talking about fighting and the concepts around it. So literally person X, like anybody who wants to and has the enthusiasm to talk about it, let's talk about it because it's great.
Cool. What is your favorite medieval-esque or period movie?
Kingdom of Heaven.
Good one.
Kingdom of Heaven. It was my favorite movie for a long time, and elements of my knighting ceremony came out of Kingdom of Heaven.
If you could add a rule to the rules of the lists, what would it be?
No hockey gloves.
No hockey gloves.
I
have a story about that, but I'm not going to waste time here on that. I'll tell you in private sometime about a not well thought out rule with that. So
I just don't like you see somebody who's got this amazing tunic and all this cool stuff, and we already have to take some liberties with duct tape and all that being on things, and then there's a big Bauer written in white letters across their wrist. It's a bad look.
If we could get all the labels off of stuff, that would be great. Like the Under Armour off your cap, and yeah. What is your favorite tournament format?
Crown tournament, really. I mean, I've got a couple that I like. I like Warlord tournaments and Warlord tournaments and a good single double Crown tournament is probably my favorite.
What's your favorite event?
Pennsic. My favorite event in my kingdom would be festival, just because of the the variety of things that happen, and just for the group of people. But you know, I've been to Penzic. It was great. I went to Raglan Fair in Drachenwald, and you know, got to fight by firelight in a Welsh castle. That was pretty cool. But you know, for even for people and fun, I think Penzic is the way to go. It's just so much fun.
If you could have any helmet in the world, regardless of cost, what kind would it be?
Yeah, look, I've thought about that. I think it would have to be a proper Sutton Hoo helmet, made from scratch, all hand etched pieces. I reckon that'd be the way to go, because you know I do wear face plates in my helmet. That's kind of my between that and my wankle shield. They're kind of my jive. So I think a really well made Sutton Hoo would be great.
Have you seen Duke Steercar's Sutton Hoo?
No.
No. Oh, I'll send you a picture. He's got some fabulous armor. All right. It's Saturday morning at Estrella, and several people want to talk to you about last night. What did you do?
Having never been to Australia, I would suggest that I probably said something unbeknownst to me that offended a large regional group of Americans that I didn't really know was a thing. You know, I really enjoyed once telling the King of Tramaris that he was from the north, and he got very upset that I was calling him a Yankee. But you know, I proceeded to tell him that he did live 10,000 miles north of me.
Right.
So
it's all about perspective. All right. Who's your favorite fight ever?
My favorite fight ever. There is a count in our kingdom, Ariston. My favorite fights are with Ariston. They are the most mentally draining tactical fights I have ever had, and it can go either way on the day. He's also a tactical fighter, so when we just end up standing off and literally doing nothing because we're just playing brain games, it's got to be Ariston, just because he tries to play the same brain game that I do. It's great.
Cool. And then the bonus question is, who is the cleanest fighter in your kingdom?
The cleanest fighter in my kingdom. I'm going to say Catan, Sir Catan. He's one of our knights who are local here to Politicopolis, and he was somebody that was a member of the household that I came up with originally. He's just a crisp, clean, efficient swordsman in what he does. And if we took SCA fighting to a car racing analogy, which is something I do a lot, he's in the Formula One league of that. Everything is tuned precisely and accurately. So yeah.
Well, very cool. Well, thank you very much for your time, and I really was interested in everything you had to say. So this was super cool. I appreciate it.
No, it's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks.